Hello, welcome to the Charmed Life podcast and YouTube channel. I am your host, Tricia Carr. I'm a spiritual teacher, intuitive channel, animal communicator, and I'm a hypnotherapist as well. In this podcast, we talk about all sorts of topics: spirituality, metaphysics, mysticism, magic, the unconditional love of the universe, and I have on guest experts who share their stories and their light. And I also do a lot of mini episodes in between that are solo, just me teaching or sharing. And this episode is part 2 of my interview with medium Joe Perreta. And Joe is also a very talented astrologer, wonderful, wise soul, so much heart. And we had to make it 2 parts because we just had too much fun talking to each other. So I hope you enjoy part 2 of my interview with Joe Perreta.
I think if you look at good and bad, I mean, that's like, those are loaded terms as it is. But for me, bad is just anything that harms or takes away someone's free will, or that's how I would classify that. And I think intention has a lot to do with it too. Like, I think if you don't mean to hurt someone, it's not as bad as if you're, but again, a whole other conversation. Mm-hmm. But I think good and bad things, however you classify it, I think everything does have a purpose. Mm-hmm. And even if it might seem unfair or be really shitty. I mean, anyone who lost somebody in the September 11th attacks will probably argue and say, well, what was the purpose of me losing my son or my father or my mother? That ruined my life. And I would never argue with that person, and that would be challenging for me to explain. But bigger picture, I know that there is, and this is just one example, and there's a million things that happen every day that I that have good and bad. But I know that there's a reason that happened. I know a lot of people have spoken on the subject, and they sort of will claim to know exactly why 9/11 happened from a spiritual perspective. And I always listen because I feel very attached to that situation, because it was really sort of like my awakening. And I know that was for a reason. And this might sound a little conspiratorial, but I think from that point forward was sort of the beginning of people waking up.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. But it's funny because even when I say that, I don't know if I even know the whole scope of it. Like, I don't know if my mind can even really, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like anyone who may claim to know everything about an event may have to check themselves a little bit too, because I feel like the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, the scope and the way that mind can think is so much bigger than you and I or anybody really could ever imagine or conceive. And so that's why it is moving toward healing. I think we're always moving toward growing and healing, or even just raising our vibration, being more enlightened. Like you can't really do that without kind of looking at the bad stuff and confronting it. And a lot of the times that comes with like a 9/11 or you have to, things get really bad, and then it calls your attention to it, and that's how it's just the way it works. I don't know why, but it just is what it is. And I am challenged again by people who are affected by it personally and are in pain and in grief by it. But at the same time, I challenge myself, and I'm like, well, I've been told there's a greater purpose. And even if you look back, even through history, not even from the spiritual perspective, but if you look back at historical events and you're like, wow, if that didn't happen, that was a horrible massacre, but then 100 years later, because of it put in motion this thing, and now these people are more independent or more free, or we have this law now. So I good usually does come from a tragedy, but it's hard to see it immediately while you're in it. And I'm just getting this now, which is kind of funny. I'm sure this happens on your show all the time with psychics and mediums. It's just like stuff comes through, but my guides did just show me that from 9/11 until now. Like, and it's funny actually, because do you do astrology at all? Like, do you know a lot about it?
Not a lot. Well, okay, no, I would say I'm quite ignorant. But then, as so far as you're concerned, so far as our profession is concerned. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't totally understand like the placement of Chiron, but I do understand the top three.
Gotcha. I'll take it. So in astrology, it's actually funny because they're showing me 9/11 and then now being like the closing of that cycle and the birth of a new one. Mm-hmm. And the eclipses that are happening, because we're in eclipse season now, eclipses go in 19-year cycles, and 19 years ago, this eclipse
That's
was,
what it was. Yeah.
September 11th.
Mm-hmm.
So they're showing that to me now. They're making me bring it up because I have thought about this before, but they're kind of putting it together where whatever that event, whatever that was,
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes to us, the effect that it had on people's hearts and minds, and we're sort of tying up that story and starting a new one with whatever's going on this year. So that's, it doesn't mean that we can expect another, September 11th attack. Every 19 years, obviously, that doesn't happen in America. So, thankfully, I'm sure there was other astrology going on, but it's a signal that this is an important year, and for people to, if they can, if you can, I would never tell anyone to put aside their grief or their pain, and ignore it. But if you can, try to see the bigger picture, because I do think it will help some people understand why the world is so crazy right now, and why things have to happen this way. And listen, I don't think the universe is a negative entity at all. I think it's, I really feel that I'm protected, and I think most people are. And again, it's hard to say it to someone who's homeless or who's gotten the shit end of the stick, as they say, their whole life. But I do think that it's looking out for us. But the universe, I do think, is all about balance, and there is, you can't have light without dark. And it almost, as I feel like in 1,000 years, maybe they'll find out this law that you can't have one without the other. It's like a new law of physics or something. So it's, I do think that it's always going to exist, the negative stuff. And I don't know if we're ever going to live in a universe which is all sunshine and rainbows all the time. But I think that's how people grow too, is through the hardships and sort of, I'm sure people use this metaphor all the time, but like a piece of coal turning into a diamond. That's pressure. That's how that happens. I know I went off on a tangent here, but that's, I'm sort of just listening to what they're telling me.
I'm loving it.
But I think that's really the way that we should be looking at things now, is if you're fearful of what's happening, just try to see where it's coming from and know that it's happening for a reason, and that the scales are sort of being, I think things are being balanced in our favor as individual beings and as a collective versus the powers that be. You know what I mean? Totally. I really do think that that's what's, kind of going on now from us, in every way you look at it, historical, political, spiritual. I see it, through all of it.
What I talk about a lot, what was given to me actually last year when I was channeling Archangel Michael about the law of one, and the information, by the way, that's like your Paulo Coelho with the alchemist and everything. In that channeling session, I hadn't read the raw material law of one yet, and there was so much, and I am now, so much of what came through in that particular channeling is actually literally said in the raw material, right. Which kind of blows my mind.
Like, okay.
One of the things is about paradox and, two seemingly contradictory concepts in one container, and that there's actually power and there's growth and there's opportunity in the paradox. And that's kind of like what we're talking about, that something good will come of it, or the light and the dark. Even in this situation, to be able to equally hold both of those contrasting components, whereas the smaller picture and the bigger picture, the smaller picture of the pain and suffering, the bigger picture of, but there will be good that comes of this. And to honor them both equally is as uncomfortable as that can be, that's where the growth is. And it's honestly, because we also can't just see the big picture and ignore it. That's spiritual bypassing. Ignore the pain. That's spiritual bypassing. That's not learning. That's not growth. In order for, even just to think about, in order for compassion to happen, you have to have honoring of the paradox. You have to honor the pain, and you have to be okay with, or forgiveness. Just think about forgiveness. True forgiveness is you go through the pain and you release it anyway. So I think that's the spiritual awakening component, is to say, this is where I am. I'm 3D, I'm that, but I am also all of that.
All of this other
bigger plan.
Right. Well, I couldn't have said that better myself, because that's exactly, forgiveness is such a good thing to use, because that really is like, there's no coincidence that all these world religions talk about forgiveness as like this, such a virtuous thing, because if you think about it, it really is like, that's the highest path you can take, because of exactly what you said. Like, it takes a lot to, I'm sure you get this too, like when you read someone who loses a child, And you know, I admire those people because I know, not that I have children of my own, but I know how my mother would feel if anything ever happened to me, or just from my own experience with, reading parents of children who passed. And so many of them find, like, I don't know if the silver lining is the right word to use, but make something out of it and grow from it. And
yes,
they will honor their pain, but then they're out there speaking about, how to deal with a child who has depression or drug abuse issue, or if the child has some cancer, they're out there speaking about their son or their daughter at meetings, or charities, whatever it is, writing books about their kids. And I feel like that's such a big thing to do, because I think for a lot of people, I've met people too lose children who just, that's it, their life is over. And I can never judge anyone's experience, because I don't know how, never would. But I always do admire the people who can kind of do both. And that is kind of a forgiveness thing, because you have to forgive the universe or whoever. Right. And
from a spirit, you have to forgive yourself for creating a life where that's going to happen. I mean, it's complex. It ends up being forgive yourself. That's the
right. Yeah. There is definitely that. It's really about forgiveness and acceptance and forgiveness, just accepting what happened and forgiving whoever you need to, yourself, for the experience. And then actually, because you really can't move past a pain if you don't forgive the source, or you can't.
And forgiveness is interesting, because it means be in advance, and then to give. So it's like, it doesn't matter what, this is given in advance of whatever it is, which is interesting. It's something that's done after the fact. Again, we're talking about paradox.
Right. Well, if you think about it too, like, the whole universe is a paradox anyway. I mean, we have just the physical world and the non-physical world.
If there wasn't paradox, there wouldn't be creation. Source energy would be just, source energy is everything, but if it's everything, then it's nothing.
Literally, I think about this all the time. It's so true. Right. Like, how even physicists struggle with this. Like, before the Big Bang, what was it? Like, well,
nothing and everything.
Right. How does that even happen? How could everything and nothing be there at the same? Right.
We can't get away from it.
We basically live in a world that just makes no sense, and our existence really makes no sense at all. And I think once you accept that, you're already on the way.
And just be okay with it. And then you are identified with source energy. Then you are identified with the creator perspective. Yeah.
Right.
I had, what was the other? I guess then maybe I said we wanted to talk about ethics. So maybe just a second about the ethics of reading, or mediumship reading, or psychic reading. Wait, did I mention the other thing? Yeah, with so far as the knowing things in advance, I also wanted to just say, like you were saying, it's because you're intentionally, well, even as a kid, you didn't even know you were intentionally, but your energy makeup was such that, and you came in with this intention to have this energy makeup such that you naturally stayed open and tapped into the collective. And so that's kind of like the that's how we're picking up on things in advance. And then, the why, or the good that can come of it, we can think of is almost like we process it like scouts in advance. And so we're kind of moving the energy through. And then when others experience it, we've already kind of done some of the work, so we can be helping, even if it's just energetic. And you might think, well, how can an 11-year-old comfort his father about losing his sister, or whatever it is? But you just are energetically, it just works.
Right.
So that's what I'm kind of like, we're on the same page there, of course.
Yeah, definitely. We're always on the same page. I haven't heard you say one thing yet that I don't agree with.
Me too. So the ethics of reading, as I said, the antiquated view was kind of like about not having free will. I can't control my gifts. And even like some of the TV shows, they kind of have the medium in the store saying, your father is coming to me and I can't help it. And I think it's so important to advance that as we are, to understand we have free will, that we are sensitive, so we're kind of picking up on things, but it is about the intention also. And I think that, like you said, the England school of mediumship and psychic development with their spiritualism churches, because in spiritualist churches, they only approach one another with permission. And I think that's great.
Right. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we kind of talk about it as free will. That means you have sovereignty in your space, you have sovereignty in your energy, you have free will about everything. And in
Right.
the ways that it seems like you don't have free will, it's because you're just unconscious to how you're running that part of your energy.
Right.
So talk about, I don't know if I kind of went on too long about it, but the
No, no,
ethics.
no, no. That's good. Well, so yeah, ethically, like, I mean, obviously, the obvious ethics are like, you're going to a medium who's looking you up. That's duh.
Oh, well,
Like,
yeah,
we don't
obvious.
have to talk about that.
Of course.
But
I mean, like
so
reading with invitation or not invitation,
right.
and
So
having
I
management of your abilities.
so I in the beginning, I again I had to put it to the test. So I wasn't like with intention or purposefully really reading a lot of people. I sort of was like, if you guys are really there and really talking to me, you got to come to me and tell me who to talk to. And
Mm.
I actually don't feel bad about it, because no one I ever read in that way was ever mad about it. And it was always somebody who knew a friend of mine
Mhm.
or found out that I did it, and then I was like, okay, like I would be somewhere and I don't know, I'd be like at a family party and I'd walk into like, I don't know, a friend's house and they'd be like, find Margaret. I'm like, I'm not walking around asking who the frig Margaret is. Like, leave me alone. And then I'd be like, all right, like if Margaret's here, whatever, let her come talk to me.
Yes,
And
that's what I
sure
do
enough,
too. Yes.
right. And sure enough, like my friend would be like, oh, this is my cousin Margaret. She heard what you do and she wants a reading. And I'd be like, son of a bitch, like, so that happened sort of in that way.
Yeah.
But even like with people my age, I kind of was a little bit more liberal with it. And I'd be like, hey, I'm a medium. Do you mind if I, talk to you? I would always ask.
Sure.
And everyone was always open to it. But that doesn't really happen to me anymore. And I think it's because I do so many readings a week.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling my guides are like my bosses, and they're like, all right, well, we give him enough work. And, he's filling his quota. So I guess we can leave him alone. But
Totally. That's
like,
so
I feel
true.
that. I really I kind of get that answer from them where they're like, oh, doing his job, it's fine. If he starts slacking, we'll throw somebody at him in the street. But other than that, but it's funny because I when it does happen, I do kind of feel compelled to like say something, because I know if they're breaking through when I'm not listening, like there must be a good reason for it.
Yes.
But I'll never run up to someone like in a TV show and be like, hi, so, your daughter's here. And I'll usually have spirit be like, bring this person to me, or
That's exactly what I do. If I'm
yeah,
picking up on it, I have, so with my team, it's kind of like, okay, you guys, the sign's off. I'm out of business, no business.
right. My light's not on. Yeah,
Unless, but when I'm the best match to help, and there's kind of like, and you
right,
can tap me in, and then,
right,
if it shows up, or let's say if it shows up, then I'm like, okay, but sometimes the spirit will come and it'll be like, can you get a mess, that kind of thing that happens. And again,
right.
it doesn't happen as much now that I work
Now,
alone.
right,
But I'll just be like, you got to do more work, because I'm not gonna just like it could frighten them away. It could hurt them.
right, right,
Like
right,
I'm still tuned to this human perspective, and
right,
spirit isn't really. I mean,
right, right, right,
spirits
right,
aren't, you know what I mean? Like,
right,
and so I'm like, no, make more happen. Get their
right,
guides to drop a feather or whatever it is,
right.
and
Do
then get
something,
them to
right,
say, Margaret, what?
right, right. Exactly. Yeah. So that I'm glad you do that too, because that's how I kind of get around. Like, all right, well, if I'm really supposed to make it happen, um,
It can
and they
happen.
usually,
There's
honestly, they usually do. It's so funny. Like,
Yeah, there's cooperating parts.
yeah,
And it helps me to stay in the flow,
mhm,
recognizing it's not about me and I'm not the one. And if it doesn't feel right, and I
mhm,
recognize it might not feel right because I don't feel right yet. And so
right.
maybe I know you got a fire engine going by.
I live down the block from a fire department. I was hoping this wasn't gonna happen.
That it could be that me hearing Margaret then is going to help me to have the faith to do it. Cool, whatever. I'm
Right,
not ego enough to, so egoic that it's not me that who isn't comfortable with it, and I need the
right,
help to get there as well. But it just, there's endless guides, angels, who can drop in synchronicities. They're
right,
already whispering in the ear of the people
right,
who
right.
are healing and need the healing.
They
And
can facilitate it, right? If they really want me to do it, they'll make it happen. And it's so funny because they really usually do. Like, I'll tell someone that I'm with, like if I'm with anyone, my friends or my mom or something, I'll be like, oh, I'm hearing this, like I'm supposed to read that lady, like I'm gonna ask them to make them come over, and sure enough, somehow they end up over there, and whoever I'm with is like, oh, you know what I mean? And like, of course, that face and the person that is approaching me is like, what? And I'm like, well, now I have to tell you. Um, but so that ethically, I try not to really pry.
Mhm.
But it is hard sometimes because I relate to the world psychically. Like
Yeah.
I'm always the second I meet someone, I'm always feeling it out. Do I like being around this person? Do I not? What does it feel like? Do they remind me of anyone else that I know? What, you know what I mean? I think we all do it. And I don't try to like pull specific like things out of their energy, like, oh, are they cheating on their husband? Whatever. Like, I don't try to do that. Every now and again, I will feel something like that. I'm like, oh my God, Joe, mind your business. You know, like I just push it out. But usually it's more like a survival thing. You know?
People are broadcasting that in a pub. I call it the public.
Right.
Because it's way out there on the edge of their
Right.
aura, and you know what I mean.
Sometimes you can't
like,
not see it.
yeah, it's almost like if they have huge bags under their eyes, they've been crying or something. So you know,
Right.
you just know it, and
Right, you just you see it, you know it. Yeah, but I find I do it just because it helps me navigate people. Like if I'm around someone and everyone's like, oh my God, you'll love Joe, and then I meet Joe and I'm like, I don't know. What you told me is not matching up with what I'm feeling. I'll never be rude or anything like that. But for me, it's just how I navigate the world and I survive as someone who's reading energy and psychic. And I don't think that that's so much of an invasion of privacy because it's what you're wearing on the outside of your energy.
Like I say, it's kind of like I kind of differentiate it when I'm teaching people who are coming up that there's like this kind of surface, there's this public broadcast.
Right.
On the physical, it's kind of like you can tell someone's personality if they're wearing really bright clothes and they're kind of like you get some things even just by the physical cues, but we're talking about more subtle on the energy and or even like if you compare it to their Facebook profile, what they're putting out on their profile picture as opposed to packing into the back and looking at their credit card. You can feel the difference to going in when you're not supposed to.
100%. Yeah, there's such a difference.
One time that it's not necessarily always about giving some traditional reading because we're here, we're working 24 hours a day in truth. One time I was in this situation in my old corporate job, nothing to do. Well, actually, it was in the spirits industry so far as like alcohol.
Yes, you told me that. Yeah,
precursor.
You never really got away from it.
You can't write this shit. Anyway, that was the job I had before I started working with spirits, and I was in this situation where I was like, it was a family business. Actually, I want to tell you, it's a Wild Turkey distillery. It was a Wild Turkey distillery, and it's run by like the head distiller is the grandfather. Then there's the son who is also a distiller, and then the grandson is like coming up in the ranks, and he was 28 years old. So we were chatting with him. It was just like three people standing around. I was just listening to him, and he was talking about how what he's doing now is traveling all over. He's traveling all the time for the company, for the family company. And one of my guys just like right in my ear so loudly and said, "Ask him about settling down and having a family." And I was like,
"What? No."
And so I was like,
"What do you mean?"
So I just did, and I said, "Oh, that sounds really fun. I wonder, are you interested in like having a family and those kinds of things?" And the light came on him. He goes, "Yeah, I am actually, and I think about it. If I wanted to do that, I definitely want to settle here and stop traveling." And I was like, boom. And they're like, "You're done. That's all you had to do."
just had to turn on the light.
I have to start telling my family that, hey, I'm ready to stop traveling for the company. I want to do something else. And I was like, awesome, I'm out.
All right. Good. Thank you. Like I did my good deed for the day.
Yeah. And it wasn't like he turned to me and said, "Why did you say that?" It was just like he kept talking about the thing, and it was just like little seed.
Right. It was right there. Well, that's how they work. So, it's so funny too, because I think for anyone listening to this who may want to do this work or, is just interested in it, like you really don't know what you're saying to someone when you say it. Like I'm sure you're like this too, because I've seen you read and I know how you treat this work, and I feel like you have the same amount of respect for it that I do, and try to do it justice. And sometimes I'm hard on myself in my own readings. I have a Virgo moon, so I'm very hard on myself about everything all the time and always in shapes and forms. I'm a perfectionist, and like if I don't give enough validation for me in a reading, I'm like, oh, that wasn't that great. And then I'll get like an email a week later from the person, and they're like, "Oh my God, you don't understand, like, the things that my grandmother brought through about, my husband." And to me, like, I'm like, well, this is like no-brainer stuff. Or, what my, my grandmother said for me to like listen to my wife more. And, I just dawned on me, and I never, like, just little things that you'd be like, it feels so not earth-shattering. But it doesn't even have to be stuff about relationships. It could be anything. Like you said, like that could have literally changed that whole man's life. And to you, you're like, all right, So it's hard not to judge, which I think is part of an ethics thing too. To be honest, is not putting too much of yourself It's bad enough that they have to come through you and your brain and use your mind and your symbolism and your understanding of the world. Like, that's very hard as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's sort of unethical, and I'm guilty of this too sometimes, to judge.
The information as it's coming through, whether it's good enough, whether it's
right. Like, you just don't know what you're saying to someone. Like, there are times when this happens a lot in groups where I always, you know, I don't know if you read like gallery style, or if you read like 50 people, 100 people at once.
I love doing that. I'm actually doing it in I have a platform, because I'm actually not doing one-on-ones right now because I'm.
Right, me either.
You're not?
Oh, well, I'm doing one-on-one like Zoom and stuff. I mean, not like, you're not doing one-on-ones at all, you're saying?
Right now, right.
Oh,
because,
gotcha.
Well, just because I have a program, my best friend and I are running a program, and it's very immersive. But I do also have a platform where of students, it's called Mystic Arts Academy. So we meet twice per month for classes. So that's what I'm doing. If you're part of that, or you could even drop in, I'm going to do gallery readings in about next month sometime. So that's what I'm going to do instead. It's a little more, it's a little easier than, you know what I mean? Like to just get it out, knock it out in one session. But just because I'm immersed right now in creating a program.
Right. That's pretty cool though. I would love to check that out. I've actually read about it on your website. I read about the Mystic Arts Academy. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, come hang out sometime.
Yeah, I would love to. If you'd have me, I'd love to.
Actually, this Sunday, we have a class this Sunday, and it's mediumship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's not always about that. It's about, I'm doing mediumship ones about, I don't know, every 2 or 3. But they'll be, like last one was about ascended masters and stuff like that. So,
cool.
Well,
very cool.
Touch base about that.
Yeah, definitely. But so I always, in groups, like, because, it's kind of a show too, in a group thing like that, when you're in a restaurant or a bar and there's 50, 100 people, whatever, like, not that you put on a show, but you have to keep people engaged, is the point. And I find it funny because I always ask my guides to give me, like, you got to give it, I only have 5 minutes or 10 minutes with this group of people, this person I'm reading in this group of, 100 people. You got to give me the goods right away, and sometimes, I'm expecting it to be like your grandfather Joe is here and he had one green eye and one blue, like in your mind, like that's how it's going to go. And then sometimes I'm like, they're showing me, it'll just be something so, like, to me it seems general.
They're showing me Snow. Oh,
right.
I'm from Boston.
Right. Or my last name is Snow. You know what I mean? And I'm like, if I, it just seems so simple, but to the person it means so much. And then when they say it, like, the group is like, oh my God, like, so it is important not to judge. And I think that's a huge part of ethics, because the reason why I say that is not even just about the judgment. It gets in the way of the quality of the reading.
Yeah.
If you start judging it, it gets in the way. Like, this is a real life example. This just happened to me. I was reading a family, and I was doing it via Zoom because it was a mother and 2 daughters, and they had just lost someone in their family, and I had my phone next to me, and I just happened to look down, and I saw that my mother and my cousin were in a group, like a text group together, and they said the name, I think it was Michelle. They said the name Michelle, but they spelled it. Actually, no, it was Michele. It was the name of, like, some hot actor that they were talking about. I think his name is Michele. It's Michele. So I looked at it and I read it, and I was like, oh, they're texting me. And I turned my phone over. It just happened to catch mine. I was like, I can't be distracted. I'm doing this reading. About 10 minutes later, I'm hearing that name again. So now I'm like, oh, this must be because I read it on my phone. You know how that happens sometimes, like in a reading, you see something, you're like, no, I just saw that, like, that's your mind. But it kept coming, and I was like, no, like, this is so annoying. Now it's stuck in my head, and I was, like, so annoyed at my mother and my cousin, because I was like, they texted me, and now it's stuck in my head, and it's getting in the way. The person I was talking to, that was their name. Like, it was in, like, another language. It was like Michelle, but in, like, French or something. And I found it at the end, and I was just like, this is what I get for judging the information that I'm getting during, like, and that's a hard one, because, like, you would just assume it's from but hello, like, what a great validation that would have been for the family. Yeah. So that's why I say it falls kind of under the category of ethics, because it will affect sort of the quality, and you want to give people the best you can.
And that's why mediums do that. Does I'm Michelle, does that make sense for you? And if it doesn't, we say, okay, we'll put a pin in that, or put it in your pocket. Maybe it'll make sense later, because we have to keep going. And because sometimes it's not for it to happen even on the session. They'll remember later, and they could
Right.
it'll make sense to them later, or it shows up later. And you know
Right.
what? A lot of people actually don't email you and say, "Oh, hey, this showed up later,"
Right.
because they think they're bothering you. So we got to just
Right.
be okay with it. We got to be
Right.
unconditional.
You have to be okay. And honestly, if
Again,
you do it long enough, you will eventually get some validations. Like I
but
know,
yeah, you can feel the heft of the thing.
you know when you're right. I
Yeah.
hate to say it like that, but I
Well,
know it's like
yeah.
an ego thing. But
Hmm.
there's sometimes when I'll get a name and I'm, who's Danny? Nobody. I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it. I know I'm hearing it.
Hmm.
And then it's just so funny because sometimes I'm sure this happens to you. If you've been doing it long enough, you'll see someone like 3 years later, and it'll be like, you read my cousin 3 years ago, and you kept bringing up the name Danny, and she had no idea who it was. And then the next month, she met her husband, and his name is Danny,
Yeah.
and now they're living happily ever after and have 2 kids and living in this beautiful home. You know what I mean? And like,
And you're like,
and
thanks
that's
a lot
why
for
I'm
the
here.
discomfort of the session, y'all. It
Right
was a
now,
month early.
right, like okay, but it's so funny because you don't always get the validation.
Hmm.
You definitely don't get it during the reading. That happens very rarely. You know what I mean? Like with
Yeah.
I shouldn't say very rarely. I mean, if you're doing your job right, you are getting
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
validation. But
In these instances we're talking about, it doesn't always,
right,
yeah.
there'll always be one piece of information that the
Mhm.
person's like, it doesn't connect. I don't know. And then most of the time, and we could be wrong. I reserve the right. I'm not 100% right all the
Of course.
time.
Yeah.
I know spirit is, but I'm just human. I
Mhm.
wish that I were right
I'm
all
a
the time, but
filter.
I'm
Yeah.
not. Right,
Mhm.
exactly. My filter can get in the way. Um, but you do. My favorite validations are the ones you get years later because I don't even remember the friggin' reading anymore.
Of
And
course.
someone's like, "You told me that this was good," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like that's cool. I'm glad that I did. And you kind of like aren't attached to it anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but that's the thing too. You can't chase the validation either. Like
No.
once you're established that you have this ability, because you do need that in the beginning as a human, as someone with an ego, you need to know that you're doing and honestly, just to
It's
learn, you need to
integrity.
know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, and it's an integrity piece too. There's a reason
Right.
why so yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. But if you're getting caught up in needing the validation all the time, which I struggle with myself again because I'm always putting myself to the test. And if I have a week where I feel like I didn't do like a knock it out of the park reading, I'm like, oh man, like I start to get like in my own head.
Hmm.
But I think that's something that's more of a me thing. You know what I mean? Like that. I don't think that's like that's just something I have to work on. But all mediums we're human. We're
Hmm.
human. We have our own stuff. Like we're not, a lot of people who don't follow mediums that closely and follow our podcasts or our Instagrams or anything like that, and they just go for readings and they see us, once every 5 years, they really think that we're like floating like on the couch at night, like meditating and our eyes rolling back in our head and there's like stardust everywhere. Like the way that people think that our brains operate are so different from,
Yeah.
like we're really no different from anybody else.
No, right.
Honestly.
Like, for example, the psychic piece, the precognitive stuff that is showing up all the time, like I don't assume that and it's happening. It's like basically it's I'm doing in with production, like when I'm recording the video and the audio, like right now,
Mm-hmm.
usually the way it comes out is that the audio is ahead of the video and I have to adjust it. Just
Mm-hmm.
that's how it is when you're using this
Right.
kind of equipment. And so that's how life is. It's like the audio is
Right.
always ahead.
Right. You're like getting a little piece ahead.
Yeah, well, but I don't assume because I'm still a human and also because it's constant. And so I
Right.
don't say I knew that all the time either because that's obnoxious. So
Right.
like it's mundane and it's like with my husband the other couple weeks ago, he came in and he goes, and I had just finished meditating. So I was kind of like maybe not totally
There.
grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he came in and he goes, "Do you know?" And I interrupted him. I said, "The laundry room." And he goes, I said, "I hung it up in the laundry room." And he goes, "I didn't even say laundry." And I honestly didn't realize he hadn't said it. And I was like, "You're talking about the pants, and
Right.
I washed them and I hung them up to dry." And he was like,
What? You're like running away from you.
"That's too much.
Yeah.
That's too witchy for the morning."
Yeah. It's too early for this
And
shit.
I was like, "I
Yeah.
really didn't realize that you hadn't said it." I telepathically heard us have the
Right.
conversation
It's
in
so funny you
linear
say that because I
sequence.
do that all the time. Like you know what? It happens a lot with I think people that we're the closest to. Like
Oh yeah.
even now, like I don't live with my best friend anymore. She moved back to Long Island with her dad, and I'm here in the city. But I'll call her about something, and she'll be like, "I was just thinking about this today." But when we live together, like the stuff, and she used to do it to me too, I think, because she's so intuitive. But like I would do it to her all the time. Like she would just bring up something and like it would be so clear to me what she was about to say, and she'd be like, but we didn't talk about this. And I'm like, but yes,
Sure?
we did on some, are you sure? Like, cause I know, like, and it's so funny cause I would like argue with her sometimes about it because it was so apparent to me that I didn't even think it was like a psychic thing. Like it was like, no, we did this already. Yeah, no, it's so funny. But with her, it's like, she knows so much about it because she kind of does it herself and she's so in tune. And so I don't have to like explain. I don't know where your husband is at with his own like intuitive journey or anything.
Well, he's like an Aquarius, so he's.
Oh my God, she's an Aquarius too. How funny! My best friend's an Aquarius. They get it, but I feel like they don't do it as much. Like it's funny.
That's
like
exactly.
they're like they totally get like vibrating on another frequency, but they're like, okay, crazy, like not crazy like that, but like you're spooky, leave me alone, like that kind of thing.
He's Sagittarius moon, and
so he's very enlightened. That's an enlightened soul right there, Aquarius and Sag.
Yeah.
Definitely open to it, which is you picked a good one, my friend. I hope he listens to this. Not that my approval even matters, but
I'll tell him to. Yeah.
Tell him, yeah. But we do live, in that way for sure. Like that stuff happens, especially with the people closest to us, I think. But I do know like a lot of people who really don't know me very well. They're like, oh, like does this happen? And I'm like, no, I'm not like Jennifer Love Hewitt in that show. Like that's not how this is happening. What do you think my life is?
Yeah.
It's very funny.
People think, and the spirit recently even told me that we're a little obsessed with things being quote unquote real in the sense that they become matter. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing is that it's not all things are meant to be matter, and it takes that. And so to be able to be open to the subtle realms is being awakened. And
right.
So, you know what, my friend, I was going to tell you, like with you and Anna, my friend Aiden and I were really close, and he'll call me, and I'll be like texting him, and he'll call me, and he'll go, "What?" I'm literally texting him, I know. I know. What do you want? Like, because he's like, you've been ringing me all day. Well, I was getting around to calling you.
Right. Oh, I love that though.
Constantly.
I do that to my mom. I text my mother all the time, and she's like, "You're so weird." She'll be like, "You're so witchy. Your name was just coming out of my mouth." But then I'm like, "Mom, but you're always like talking and thinking about me." I'm an only child. My mother's like an Italian mom, so like I'm always kind of at the surface anyway. But it is funny because I'll like, or she'll like just be about to call me, or even I'll haven't looked at my phone all day, and I'll look at it, and I'm like, "Oh, Ma, like you're cool." Or, do you ever? I'm sure you have this where my phone's always on vibrate. I never have like a ringtone or anything, but I'll just know like if my mother's calling me, or like I'll just, or sometimes like my phone will vibrate and I'm like, I have to get this. I don't know who this is, and it'll be like someone I haven't heard from in a while, and like something's going on. Like you just know. So like in that way, I guess we're not. And
I do coaching and like mentoring, and so I kind of kick myself because I'll be like, or even if it's someone who's an old, and like I'm not currently in a program with them or something like that, but I will really, they'll be nudging me, or I can sense it, or whatever it is being put, and I'm like, and they'll have reached out to me, and I feel like so dumb. It's like almost, again, I have to let go of my ego. On the one hand, I'm like judging myself for not reaching out to them first, because that would have meant something to them.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm trying to feel okay with saying, hey, listen, I knew you were going to reach out. And because I'm like, I'm not trying to make myself sound cool.
Right. I'm just,
but maybe, you know what I mean? Like, so again, it's like this weird place of going, you like not judging myself, not feeling egoic. So yeah, that happens a lot with my students and clients too.
I do that too. Like with, I mean, I usually, like if it's people close to me, I'm usually like, oh my God, I knew that. Cause like, I know that they know where I'm coming from, but I do try not to say it with like people I don't know. Cause I'm like, like as I'm like, if I say it, then I'm like, oh, they're going to be like, oh, of course this medium would be telling me that, you know what I mean? Like or even like during a reading sometimes, like if you have a client who like says too much during a reading, I'm sure you get that where I'm like, don't tell me too much. Like, let me do the work.
Yeah.
There'll be times where like, I don't know, I'm like getting a name, and before I can say it, they say
They've already said it, and you're like, I already heard that.
Like, right, and then I say it, and I'm like, great, like now that I'm recording, and whoever listens to it's going to be like, of course he would say that. You know what I mean? But you kind of have to let that go because it's your experience. You know what happened in your own head, like you know that you're not making it up. But we do, unfortunately, as mediums, the public, the way we appear really does matter because we're not in a very universally accepted field and job, and it's not even about about the money part of it, or it's just more like if people could just accept and know what we know, I think the world would be a lot better off in a lot of ways. So that's why, I totally get that because, some people may say that that's ego, but I think that's part of the job is really like representing us as because as the right thing, because if you even like last year I read this book. Oh my god, I wish I could remember the name of it. It's by Laurie Cabot. She's the official witch of Salem.
Mm.
I'm a little bit like I like fanboy over her a little bit, because I, as much as I identify as a psychic medium, like the witch thing really resonates with me, honestly.
Oh,
Like,
well, we are witches too.
right?
You know what I mean? Witchcraft is
Like,
about embodying the energies that we're talking
yeah, like,
about.
and she goes through this whole history of it, and I'm reading about it, and I'm like, these abilities she's talking about, that what witches really are, is how I naturally was just born and was.
Totally.
So I kind of identify in that way, and I know for some people it might be confusing because you hear witch and you think of Wicca and
Yeah, I don't mean the religion at all. The religion's not even that old,
right.
which I
Right,
don't know if
that's
it's,
like, yeah, a lot of people don't know that, but it like
yeah,
really formed. They kind of tried to centralize the paganism and stuff. What is like the 50s or something?
right.
Which I think is great. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm,
Right.
I'm so not knocking it. I think it's wonderful, and
I'm just
I've
not interested in religion because I already did a religion and
right,
grew out of it.
we did that. But I do gravitate toward it because it's so much of it is what we do anyway.
Hmm.
But I kind of identify as that, and if you look back through time, I mean, witches have been burned forever. You know what I mean? Like we started out accepting it, and then all of a sudden, in ancient world, it was, you had the Oracle of Delphi, and all these amazing mediums and channels, and then religion happened, sort of just demonized the whole thing. And I sort of feel like it's our responsibility as mediums, as witches in a way, to in modern day to change the way that people look at it. And not to get on my soapbox here, but it's very unfair if you are someone. I know a lot of mediums who don't go down the road that I did, and they kind of stick to just the spiritual route, which there's nothing wrong with that because it's what we do. But I always look at the science, and I feel like there's no reason why the two shouldn't be fused. And when you really try to talk to people in that world, you're met with a lot of resistance from most, academia, from the scientific realm. And I mean, there's people in there who accept it, and I think there's a lot more that can't admit it because of the culture.
Well, it's a cultural thing, and it is also that, it's the old, yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it isn't any different. Science has to go into the chaos, release all conditions and preconception,
Right.
and go in and then bring something through. It's exactly the same thing that we do. What real
Right,
science
it's
is
just
exactly what we do.
different method, right? Different like methods.
Yeah.
100%. I see it that way too, and I think that's why I know it's not our job to change anyone's mind. I know we have to do our work and let the work speak for itself. And I think any successful medium knows that that's just the way to go. You can't go chasing like skeptics and changing their minds, and people have to come to it in their own time with their own experience. I get that, but I do think that it's sort of our responsibility to do things like this podcast, where you have all kinds of different people on with different viewpoints and coming at it from different angles, and just me with the scientific stuff and studies that I've been in. Like, I just feel like those are so important, because eventually, whether it's 50 years from now, or hopefully not 1,000, but as time goes on, I think people will sort of see like, oh, okay, there was a lot of value and validity in all of that. And I think people who try to shed light on it and make it a more reputable and useful thing, if you could show people that it's useful and more than just like if you believe it, that's great. And I think a lot of people have that sort of attitude, like, well, you believe it's true and it helps, so it helps. But it's like, no, like, you could validate this stuff here in the physical world. Like, there's so many things that go on every day that are rooted in, like you said, physical reality, which we do kind of get stuck on, that whole like, what is real anyway. But that's a whole other philosophical conversation we could dive into another hour and a half. But yeah, I think that's also, just to bring it back to the ethics thing, I think that's another really ethical thing you can do as someone who's a witch or an intuitive or a medium, is
Magician,
right, elevate the practice and kind of take the taboo, the sting out of it for people, because they hear it and they just don't, it's so fringe for so many people.
But less and less so. Yeah, your
right,
generation,
it is getting much better,
and the generation behind you is coming in turned on.
Coming in hot.
They
definitely are, for sure, which I'm loving it, because I mean, even me growing up, like, I'm only 31, but I remember when I was growing up, like, it was still more, I mean, I lived on Long Island where there was a million mediums and everybody was, kind of into it, but it was still sort of like a secret thing a little bit, like, oh, we're into medium. Now it's, it's so different, which I'm grateful for, but we do have a long way to go, I think, in the more official
Well,
sort of capacity.
as a psychic medium, you can always see that there's a long way to go because you can see eternity. So
Right. Exactly.
you could be in Atlantis, bilocating and floating away. Long way to
Right.
go, man.
Well, right. Okay. Which is might be why I'm a little bit of a pessimist, I guess, which you wouldn't think, but I'm sort of like, I always go, I'm sure you find that too. Like people are so hopeful sometimes, and I'm like, oh, you guys, because I do feel like we see kind of further ahead.
Yeah,
That's funny you bring that
absolutely.
up because I
Gotta,
really do
but
feel that.
we get that pressure to be present then. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we have a different lesson in being present than maybe
Than
people who
other
don't do what we
people.
do. But we're
Right.
still all still human, still all learning the
Right.
same things, just
So
kind of maybe from a different orientation.
right through a different lens, as they
Yeah.
say.
Oh my gosh, this has been so fun.
Oh,
And
I know. I love this.
we could have like a 10-hour show. And you have to come back now. You have some things to
Yeah, I would love to. I would definitely. I would love to once. I mean, I'd love to come back before. I'll come back once a week if you
I
have it. I
know,
love
but
it.
that's maybe, you know what, maybe we could organize something. Well, we'll talk
We'll
offline.
talk. We'll talk.
So we have all of your links and everything in the description, and we're gonna to do a tandem reading on Instagram Live, which is
Yes.
so
I'm
fun.
so excited about that. Oh, and I
Yeah.
do want to mention too. I
Mhm.
didn't. I didn't include this link because I hadn't cooked up this plan yet. When I literally just thought of this the other night, but I am actually going to. I think August 1st. I'm going to do it. I'm going to wait till Mercury's like fully out of retrograde and like it's time to go. I'm actually going to join Patreon. I haven't.
Oh, cool.
I haven't really. I really don't know too much about it.
I can tell
Um,
you about it. I did it. I'm actually doing the
uh,
Patreon model, but just on my own website. But I can
oh,
tell you all about
cool.
Patreon. But yeah,
Yeah,
do
I
that.
would love to talk to you about it because I'm definitely going to do it because this sort of came out. This came out of white guilt, honestly. Is how the Patreon thing sort of evolved because I raised my prices a few years ago because I got a lot more business and somebody another famous medium was like promoting me and because I had read her mother. It was this whole thing, and she was like, really did it for my benefit. But she was like, either raise your prices or I'm not posting about you. And she
Mhm.
kind of forced me to take a
Mhm.
step up and really charge the money for my time. And I get that, but I do feel like I noticed, and I hate to say this way, and this is nothing against any of my clients who may watch this or any of yours, but I do get most of my clients are sort of affluent, like white women. And I think
Mhm.
about it all the time because I'm like, where's like everyone else? I was like,
Mhm.
maybe it's like the price point. Or I don't want to insult anyone and say that because I do get, black people and I do get, everybody, but
Yeah.
it's mostly predominantly a certain kind of person.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what else can I do to maybe reach people that like aren't in the sphere or like different platforms? And then I was like, Patreon is like such a non-committal, like it's like a $3 a month or something.
Mhm.
So I'm definitely going to do it. I'll do like different tiers and stuff.
Yeah.
But I did want to start talking about it because I know I haven't
That's good
launched it yet.
because,
But
well, yeah, also because people could be listening to this after you've started it. So when you
right,
have it set up, we will put the link in.
right,
And even so, if you're listening to it current to this, follow Joe on Instagram and, all the other places, and you'll be able to get the announcement
right,
there.
and I'll definitely be posting links and stuff to that. But I just want to make it more affordable
Yeah.
for everyone and be
That's
able to reach
my
all
platform is
different
like that
people.
too. It's
Yeah.
much it's pretty affordable, and I'm actually going to add some tiers, lower tiers to it for even like for other things too.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to work it out. I've never really, had to put a business plan together. Sort of. I just like started reading, talking to dead people, and that was it. I just went from there. I was like, all right, well, this is what I do. So this is the model, guys. Give me money. But no, it's just because the direction, and I'm so again grateful for my career and everything. But the direction I went really is very much reaching sort of like the group clientele because I've worked with group and again great organization. They've done well for me and tried to elevate the profession too. But it really only reaches like affluent white women for the most part and I want to be able to give this ability and this gift to everybody, not
Yeah.
just one type of person.
Yeah, and then on Instagram, that's free. So you're also,
Right, right,
tithing or something
right.
as
Yeah, and
well.
I do like
Totally.
lives on there and like little like
Yeah.
tarot card reading for the month and stuff.
Well, the other reason why doing Patreon or some kind of membership platform is good because I was going to ask you, are you teaching? And if not, when are you going
Mhm.
to start teaching? So you can do a teaching and then do some gallery readings or,
Right,
along with that if in the meetings that you're holding. But to be able to cultivate it as a group because you have just so much to offer. And after doing one-on-ones for a while, unless a person really doesn't have the interest or energetic alignment with working with groups, but after working with one-on-ones for a while, like the natural thing to do is to start teaching because
right,
of the things that you've learned and it's more efficient And again, that multiplication by 1,000 rule of being
Right.
able to come together in a consciousness project situation. We
Right.
all grow so much. A person can come to one of your meetings and not have a reading themselves, but they had the teaching, they're hearing other people's readings, and they're going to so much, like, the energy is infectious, and we
Right.
grow together by bringing our hearts to this situation. So I'm so glad you're
Right.
doing that. That's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'll keep everybody informed. But anyway, well, thank you for having me. I
Oh my
really,
gosh.
really appreciate this, and I cannot wait to do it again. I had so much fun speaking with you, as always, even on and off camera.
I know. Me too. I just love you so much.
Oh, I love you too.
Well, I hope you had as much fun as I did talking to Joe, and got into that amazing energy that he has to share. So beautiful. Be sure to scroll down to the description of the YouTube video or the podcast, however you are listening or watching, and you can find Joe's links. Follow him on Instagram, and I guess pretty soon you might be able to catch us doing a joint live stream on Instagram. I think that'll be so fun. And I appreciate you so much for being here. I appreciate you for shining your light, for seeking, for asking questions, for being curious, and for doing the work that you are doing, because we are all benefiting by your light. And with that, I will say thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are.